Greetings, welcome to week 6 unit 2 on tagging the course outcomes. We spent in the earlier unit in understanding how to write good course outcomes. We have presented different methods or tools that you can use, or care that you have to take, do's and don'ts, checklists and all that we have presented. But after that, the next stage is to tag them. In this unit, we will tag the course outcomes with the program with POs, PSOs, cognitive levels, knowledge categories, categories addressed, and number of classroom or laboratories or field sessions associated with the CO. Because all courses are not the same. Sometimes institutes handle laboratory course independently of theory course. Sometimes they combine laboratory with the theory. So whatever methods that we are presenting, they are applicable to all. Now, first of all, many universities describe the syllabi of their courses in terms of 5 to 6 units, sometimes larger number. They just present as units. All units are associated with the same number of classroom sessions. That is one practice they follow. Maybe occasionally you will find someone saying that different number of classroom sessions for different units as well. If one CO is associated with one unit, all COs are required to have the same number of classroom sessions, which is not appropriate. But some institutes may insist on doing that. Autonomous institutions, that is tier 1 institutions, are not required to follow the unit structure and may have the number of COs as decided by the course content and the teacher. That freedom may be given to by the department to the individual teacher, with of course justifying. One cannot go overboard either too small a number or too large a number of COs. Different COs may have different number of classroom sessions. The number of sessions depends on the importance and scope of the CO as decided by the instructor. Sometimes the teacher decides a set of concepts or procedures. Procedural knowledge is more important and would like to spend more time on that. So the number of sessions he may personally choose to be more. Or if some concept is necessary to know but it is not that important, it is not the focus, then you have less number of sessions. But that decision is made by the instructor. Now, while tagging, you need to have some kind of a simple procedure. As stated earlier, CO statement starts with an action verb from one of the cognitive levels. Generally, you start your CO with some action verb. Even if you have multiple action verbs in the statement, generally it starts with one action verb. And the action verbs verb enables you to tag a CO with the cognitive level. You will use some acronyms to tag in the table. So R for remember, U for understand, AP for apply, AN for analyze, E for evaluate, and C for create. When the CO has more than one action verb, then it is tagged with the multiple cognitive levels. Corresponding cognitive levels are all mentioned in that. And as we said, there are no sharp demarcations between some cognitive levels or certain activities, cognitive activities. You always will have a doubt because we don't have that many words to describe all the detailed things. So you will say whether, for example, when I use the word action verb identify, it can belong to understand. It can also belong to analyze. So which one it belongs to? Based on the context, the instructor should make the judgment. And we tag the knowledge elements also with, we tag the COs also with the knowledge categories. And as we mentioned, a CO can have more than one category of knowledge. It can deal with conceptual, it can deal with factual, it can deal with procedural, and depending on what you want, it can also have metacognitive, and then you can add the 4 Vincenti categories of knowledge as well. So depending on the CO, you should decide, or what you have in mind, you should decide which are the knowledge categories. All of them can be, a CO can be tagged with all those varieties. You also use some acronyms for that. Sometimes some knowledge categories or some knowledge elements are implicit, whether as prerequisites or you may not exclusively put that in the statement, but if it is implicit, then you can also tag with that. Okay. Then we also want to tag a CO with the selected POs. This is where you have, in our current practice throughout the country, you have this issue, because the concept of bringing in the POs and the retainment is, though it is now 10 years old, still it hasn't permeated into at all levels. Majority of the courses as they are offered at present, particularly non-autonomous institutions, generally do not address strongly any PO other than PO1. Even the PO1 is not strongly addressed. Even then, they do not attempt to solve complex engineering problems. If you look at PO1, it says you are required to solve complex engineering problems. We don't even talk about what is a complex engineering problem. We don't give examples, and students do not solve them. Okay. So PO1, while it is addressed, you can only say mildly. It is possible that PO2, PO3, PO4, PO5 are addressed to a limited extent by some courses, because these include problem formulation, literature survey, and then design of something, or conducting some experiments in the lab, interpreting the data, and possibly using currently available tools like PSPICE or MATLAB and so on. Okay. So PO2, PO3, PO4, PO5 are addressed to a certain extent. Hardly any course addresses complex engineering problems that we already mentioned. There may be some specific courses that address PO6, PO7, PO8 and PO9 and PO10. Like what is PO6? It is related to engineer and society, and for example you can have, which also includes sustainability, you can have a course on sustainability, you can have a course on environment and so on. That is PO6. PO7 is ethics, which is some programs do have a professional ethics course. PO8 is related to group activity, and PO9 is related to communication, and PO10 is related to what we call project management. So one can have specific courses for this. It is, some people do so. For example, PO9 you have your professional communication is one of the courses that you have. Okay, and projects can potentially address many POs. If you plan well, orchestrate well, and then use proper rubrics for it, you can address many POs through a project. But tagging a CO with any PO requires that assessment includes items related to the CO identifying the PO. In the sense, your intention may be to address the PO, but how do you demonstrate that I have actually addressed? Somewhere in the assessment it has to get reflected. Then only you can say, yes, I have actually addressed PO and students have attained those POs. Further, even if a CO of a course has the potential to address multiple POs, it may be difficult to conduct necessary instruction and assessment to effectively address such POs within the available time and resources in Tier 2 institutions. Because in Tier 2 institution you have a centralized examination. Centralized examination brings its own constraints, and in which case I may not be able to design an assessment item which addresses a specified PO. So, by just declaring that I am addressing PO and not conducting any assessment representing that is not attaining that PO. Okay. Assessment items related to several POs cannot be easily designed as well. It is not easy to do that, and even if designed, cannot be used easily in centrally conducted and evaluated exams. So even first of all, it is difficult to design. It may take a lot of time to solve the problem, and then even if I do that, I may not be able to evaluate properly. Okay. So a department can arrange for some activities outside the curriculum to address some POs, but however, the scope of and distribution of these activities need to be carefully planned by the department. Generally what people do is, okay, I will organize some expert lectures to ensure that some POs are addressed. But by just expert lecture alone, you cannot ensure that the students have attained that. You have to conduct some kind of assessment for that to ensure that they are attaining that particular PO. And you also have to tag with PSOs. By and large, when you write, because you can only write maximum 3 PSOs for a program, and if you write them well, generally one course predominantly addresses only one PSO. Sometimes you may also address more than one PSO, but very rare. Most of the courses will address one PSO. Okay. Now we will show some examples, simple examples, which are not given by some faculty. They are not designed for addressing some POs, but we can show like this. This is a course on fluid mechanics. Understand the fundamentals of fluid mechanics and fluids. It's not a very good CO, but by tagging, what are you doing? You are addressing PO1 and PSO1, and cognitive level CL is understand, is you, we are saying, and KC means knowledge category, it is conceptual, so C, and then the number of class sessions I have is 6. Okay, so that is how it is done. Instead of, I can modify it by understanding, that means any sub-process that belongs to understand is of relevance to this CO. But if I am only confining myself to 2 or 3 sub-processes, those action verbs can be added. And instead of understand, we can write those action verbs. Okay. We will read one more, CO3. Calculate the center of buoyancy of floating body and the velocity and acceleration of fluid. Okay, you are calculating, so it is apply, your cognitive level is apply, and Again, I am restricting myself to PO1 and PSO1, and it is again conceptual. And then I am planning to use 12 sessions, which means it is a fairly big topic, and I may further subdivide into multiple competencies, but that is a different activity. We have to come later for that. Okay, this is how one can write a CO, one can tag the selected COs. Okay, this is one very elementary way of doing it. Now, instead of the same thing can be modified, can be made into a rich one, but we will talk about another kind of example, kinematics of machines. It's a 4-credit course. Now, if you see some examples, identify key components and their functions of mechanical systems such as the robotic arms, engine linkages, and packaging machinery using the terminology of mechanisms. So, identifying is the issue and it belongs to understand. Now, I am not broadly putting understand, I am putting it as identification. Okay. So, but it belongs to cognitive level is you, and knowledge category is factual. You are only presenting factual information. And class sessions are 3, and I have 1 tutorial session. The POs are restricted to PO1 and PSO is only 1, PSO1. Let me present one more of the same thing. CO5, it belongs to explain the characteristics of motion in gears with involute profiles and select appropriate gear types and configurations for proper transmission systems in wind turbines, electric vehicles and robotic systems. Here also it is restricted to PO1 and PSO1, but here we say explain, that is the action verb that belongs to understand, and then we are also saying select appropriate ones. Selection belongs to evaluate. Okay, you are making a decision regarding something, and that is why you have UA, and on top of that knowledge categories is procedural, because you have to do some simple calculations at least to explain something, and then for making decisions as well. So it is procedural, and the selection will depend on what we call criteria and specifications as well. Okay. So knowledge categories belong to criteria and specifications. Class sessions are 8, tutorial sessions are 3. Okay, that is how we can design. Say you please make an attempt to understand each one of them and each one of the COs in terms of the whether they need to be modified or whether they need to be reworked out, and whether you, let's say you want to address some additional COs, how do I modify my COs? That is something that you can experiment yourself and write correspondingly. Okay. So you are looking at COs and tagging them. Why do we require to tag the COs with all these activities? Because it again, first it helps you in planning, instruction, and then also we are required to compute the attainment of course outcomes, and also we are required to design appropriate in assessment. For all that, this tagging will help, will show or demonstrate to you in the following units about what is the kind of how you can use this tagging information to to plan and compute the attainment of the outcomes. So in the next unit we will look at computing the attainment of course outcomes and close the quality loop, because that is ultimately is a requirement of NBA, that you should demonstrate the attainment of course outcomes and how you are planning to improve the quality on continuous basis. Okay, thank you for your attention.